Welcome to Bright Path Narratives. This is a place for stories that wake something up inside you. Stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary inner battles. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt that quiet distance between who you are and who you know you could become? If you're here, this story didn't find you by accident. Sit with it, listen closely, let it begin. She held the pencil in her trembling hand, staring at the blank page in front of her. Outside, the rain hammered against the window of the small apartment, each drop like a reminder of everything she'd lost. This wasn't just any pencil. This was the last thing her father ever gave her before he disappeared. And tonight, 23 years later, she was about to discover why he never came home. What she found hidden inside that ordinary yellow pencil would unravel a secret so devastating it would shake her understanding of everything she thought she knew about her family, about trust, and about the man she called Dad. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how a simple pencil changed my life forever. But to understand what happened, you need to know where it all began. It started on a cold October morning in 1998 in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. I was 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework, when my father walked in holding a brand new pencil. It was yellow, perfectly sharpened, with a pink eraser on top. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just a pencil. He placed it gently on the table in front of me and said something I would never forget. "Sarah, keep this pencil safe. No matter what happens, don't ever lose it. Promise me." I looked up at him, confused. It was just a pencil. Why did it matter so much? But there was something in his eyes that morning, something I'd never seen before. Fear, desperation, like he was carrying a weight too heavy for one person to bear. I nodded and promised him I would keep it safe. That was the last real conversation I ever had with my father. 2 days later, he left for work and never came home. No phone call, no goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. The police searched for weeks. They interviewed neighbors, checked his bank accounts, reviewed security footage from his office. Nothing. It was as if David Mitchell had simply vanished into thin air. My mother fell apart. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped being the mom I knew. Eventually, she had to accept what everyone else already believed. He was gone, and he wasn't coming back. The years that followed were hard. We moved to a smaller house. My mother worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. I grew up fast, faster than any child should have to. But through it all, I kept that pencil. I never used it, never sharpened it, never let it out of my sight. It sat in a small wooden box on my dresser, a silent reminder of the father I'd lost and the promise I'd made. Life moved on, as it always does. I graduated high school, went to college, became a graphic designer. I fell in love, got engaged, and started planning a future that felt bright and full of possibility. But some promises never let you go. Some mysteries refuse to stay buried. And some pencils are more than they appear. It wasn't until last month, when I was packing up my childhood home after my mother passed away from cancer, that everything changed. I was sorting through old boxes in the attic when I found a letter tucked inside one of my father's old books. The handwriting was his. The date was October 1998, just days before he disappeared. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was addressed to me. "Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've grown up without me. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to leave you, but I had no choice. They were coming for me, and if I stayed, they would have hurt you and your mom. I couldn't let that happen. I left you something, a key to the truth. It's hidden inside the pencil I gave you. When you're ready, when you're strong enough, break it open. Inside, you'll find a phone number. Call it. Trust no one else. I love you, sweetheart. Always. Dad." I sat there in the dusty attic, tears streaming down my face, holding a letter from a ghost. For 23 years, I'd carried that pencil, thinking it was just a memory. Now I knew it was a message, a lifeline, a truth waiting to be discovered. I rushed downstairs, grabbed the wooden box from my old bedroom, and stared at the yellow pencil inside. My heart was pounding. My mind was racing with questions. What was my father involved in? Who was after him? And what truth was hidden inside this ordinary piece of wood and graphite? I took a deep breath and snapped the pencil in half. Inside the wooden barrel, rolled up tightly, was a small piece of paper. I carefully unrolled it. On it was a phone number with a 202 area code, Washington, D.C. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and dialed. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a man's voice answered, deep and cautious. "Who is this?" I swallowed hard. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm looking for information about my father, David Mitchell. He disappeared in 1998. There was a long pause. Then the man spoke again, his voice softer now, almost sad. "Sarah, we've been waiting for your call for a long time." Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The man on the phone identified himself as Robert Chen, a former federal agent who worked with my father over 2 decades ago. He refused to say more over the phone and instead gave me an address in Washington, D.C. He told me to come alone and to tell no one where I was going. Every instinct in my body screamed that this was dangerous, that I should hang up and walk away. But I couldn't. I'd spent 23 years wondering what happened to my father. I'd spent my entire adult life living with a hole in my heart that never healed. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. 3 days later, I was on a plane to Washington. I told Marcus that I was visiting an old college friend, a lie that sat heavy in my stomach the entire flight. When I landed, I took a cab to the address Robert had given me. It was a small coffee shop in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that looked ordinary and forgettable. I walked inside and spotted him immediately. An older man, maybe in his 60s, sitting in the corner booth with a cup of black coffee. He looked up as I approached, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition, sadness, guilt. I sat down across from him, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Then he pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table between us. "Your father was a good man, Sarah, one of the best I ever worked with." I stared at the folder. "Worked with? What do you mean? He was an accountant." Robert shook his head slowly. "That was his cover. Your father worked for a classified division of the Department of Justice. He was an undercover financial investigator. His job was to track illegal money movements, expose corruption, and gather evidence against some of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country." The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, my quiet, gentle father who helped me with my math homework and taught me how to ride a bike, he wasn't an accountant. He was a spy. I felt the room spinning around me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did everyone lie? Robert's expression darkened. "Because telling you would have put you in danger. Your father was investigating a massive money laundering operation tied to a powerful crime syndicate. He was close to exposing them, close to bringing down people with reach and resources most of us can't even imagine. But someone tipped them off. They found out who he was." I felt my throat tighten. "So they killed him?" Robert hesitated, and in that pause, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. "No, Sarah, they didn't kill him. He went into witness protection. The marshals moved him to a secure location with a new identity. He wanted to take you and your mom with him, but it wasn't possible. The syndicate was watching your house, monitoring your phones. If you'd disappeared too, they would have known something was wrong and hunted all of you down. So your father made the hardest choice of his life. He left to keep you safe." Tears blurred my vision. "So he's alive?" Robert nodded. "He's alive, and he's been waiting for you." He slid the folder across the table. "Everything you need is in this folder. An address, a contact number, instructions on how to reach him safely. But Sarah, you need to understand something. The people he testified against, some of them are still out there. Some of them still have connections. If you go to him, you could be putting yourself at risk. You need to think carefully about whether you're ready for that." I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were documents, photographs, and a handwritten letter. The handwriting was the same as the one I'd found in the attic, my father's. I couldn't read it, not yet, not here. I looked up at Robert, my voice barely a whisper. "Where is he?" Robert wrote down an address on a napkin and pushed it toward me. He's in a small town in Montana. He's been living under the name Thomas Gray. He works as a woodworker, keeps to himself. He's saved, Sarah, but he's been alone for 23 years, carrying the guilt of leaving you behind. I think seeing you would mean more than anything in the world. I left the coffee shop in a daze, the folder clutched tightly to my chest. I walked for blocks without knowing where I was going, my mind replaying every memory I had of my father. The way he used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, the way he laughed at my terrible jokes, the way he hugged me so tight I thought I'd disappear into him. He wasn't gone, he was alive, and he'd spent every day of the last 23 years thinking about me, missing me, loving me from a distance. That night in my hotel room, I finally read his letter. It was long, full of apologies and explanations and love. He told me about the investigation,
About the threats, about the impossible choice he had to make. He told me he thought about me every single day. He told me he was proud of me, even though he'd never gotten to see me grow up. And at the end, he wrote something that broke me. I don't expect you to forgive me, Sarah. I don't expect you to understand. But if you ever want to see me, if you ever want to hear my voice again, I'll be here, waiting, always waiting. I cried until I had no tears left. Then I made a decision. I was going to Montana. I was going to see my father. I called Marcus and told him the truth, everything. He was shocked, angry that I'd lied, scared for my safety. But he also understood. He knew how much this meant to me. He told me to be careful and to come home safe. I promised him I would. 2 days later, I was driving through the mountains of Montana, following the GPS to the address Robert had given me. The town was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. I found the house at the end of a dirt road surrounded by trees and silence. It was a simple cabin, wood and stone with smoke rising from the chimney. I parked the car and sat there for a long time, staring at the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What if he didn't want to see me? What if this was a mistake? What if I wasn't ready? But then I remembered the pencil, the promise, the letter, and I knew I had to do this. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. I raised my hand and knocked. For a moment, there was nothing. Then I heard footsteps inside. The door opened, and there he was. Older, gray-haired, with lines on his face that hadn't been there before. But it was him, my father, David Mitchell, Thomas Gray, the man who gave me a pencil and told me to keep it safe. His eyes widened when he saw me. His mouth opened, but no words came out. And then, without thinking, I stepped forward and hugged him. He wrapped his arms around me and held me so tightly I could barely breathe. He was crying, and so was I. 23 years of grief, of loss, of unanswered questions, all pouring out in that single moment. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry." I pulled back and looked at him, really looked at him. "I know, Dad. I know why you left, and I forgive you." His face crumpled and he cried harder. We stood there on his porch, two broken people putting each other back together, one hug at a time. Over the next few days, my father and I talked. We talked about everything. He told me stories about his undercover work, the cases he'd cracked, the lives he'd saved. He told me about the night he left, how he'd sat in his car outside our house for hours, trying to find the courage to drive away. He told me about the years in witness protection, the loneliness, the guilt, the endless wondering if I was okay. And I told him about my life, about Mom, about school, about Marcus, about the career I'd built and the woman I'd become. He was proud of me. I could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice. And for the first time in 23 years, I felt whole. But there was still one question that haunted me. Why the pencil, Dad? Why hide the phone number inside a pencil? He smiled, a sad, wistful smile. Because I knew you'd keep it safe. I knew you'd never lose it. A pencil is simple, ordinary, something no one would ever think twice about. But to you, it was a promise, and I knew you'd keep that promise no matter what. He was right. I had kept it safe. For 23 years, through moves and relationships and life changes, I'd carried that pencil with me. And now, finally, I understood why. It wasn't just a memory, it was a lifeline. A connection between a father and daughter separated by time and distance and impossible circumstances. It was love, hidden in the most ordinary of objects, waiting patiently to be discovered. Before I left Montana, my father gave me something. A new pencil, yellow and perfectly sharpened, just like the one he'd given me all those years ago. For your future, he said. A reminder that even in the darkest times, even when everything seems lost, there's always hope. There's always a way forward. I hugged him one last time, promised to visit again soon, and drove back through the mountains with tears in my eyes and peace in my heart. When I got home, Marcus was waiting for me. I told him everything, showed him the letters, the documents, the new pencil. He held me while I cried, listened while I talked, and never once made me feel like I was crazy for doing what I did. That night, I wrote my father a letter. I told him about my life in detail, about the wedding we were planning, about the future I was building. I told him I loved him and that I was proud to be his daughter. And I promised him that I would visit again soon, that I wouldn't let another 23 years go by without seeing him. I keep the new pencil on my desk now, right next to my computer. I look at it every day, a reminder of everything I've learned, that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, that sacrifice comes in many forms, that sometimes the hardest choices are made not for ourselves, but for the people we love most, and that hope, real hope, can be hidden in the most ordinary of places, waiting patiently for us to find it. My father gave up everything to keep me safe, his name, his life, his family, his identity. He lived alone for over 20 decades, carrying the weight of that choice every single day. But he did it because he loved me. And now, finally, after all these years, I get to love him back. Not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as a real person, flesh and blood, sitting across from me with a cup of coffee and a smile on his face. So the next time you pick up a pencil, remember this story. Remember that the simplest objects can carry the deepest meanings. Remember that love can survive anything, even time, even distance, even impossible circumstances. And remember that sometimes the answers we're looking for are right in front of us, hidden in plain sight, waiting patiently for us to be brave enough to...
Everyone uses a pencil. But now you know this story. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have broken the pencil open? Would you have made that call? Would you have driven to Montana to meet a father you thought was dead? How would you have felt standing on that porch, seeing him for the first time in over 20 years? I want to hear from you. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me your story if you have one. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that hope is real and that love never truly dies. And if you think this story was powerful, wait until you hear what we have coming next. Stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Stories of love, loss, sacrifice, and redemption. Stories that will make you think, make you feel, and stay with you long after the video ends. Subscribe so you never miss a story that could change the way you see the world. Because every object has a story, every person has a secret, and every ending is really just a new beginning waiting to be discovered.